Thank you. Good morning. It is awesome to see so much interest in product analytics. This is going to be fun. So I'm going to teach you today, at least get you started on your journey if this is new to you, learning how to apply product analytics to grow your product. What I hope to leave you with today is a vision. It's a vision for implementing and leveraging product analytics in your app so you can grow it in the marketplace. In detail, we're going to talk about product-led growth. You may hear me refer to as PLG. We'll talk about specifically what it means in the Atlassian marketplace. It's a little different. Then we'll talk about activation journey maps. This is the key to how you're going to do product-led growth. We'll talk about how to analyze data with activation funnels in your activation journey map, your HAM. We'll talk about how to instramap. Instramap, that's a new word. Kind of fits though. How to instrument your activation journey map in order to understand how to activate your trial users. We're going to talk about watching activation with session replay and how session replay fits in with instrumenting your app and understanding the activation journey of your trial users. And then next steps for applying product-led growth to boost your activation for your app and to boost conversion ultimately. And then a few hints on further learning on your journey as you're learning product-led growth if this is a new concept to you. So why should you listen to me? Well, I've been in the software business for decades. See the gray, see the bald? I've been in it for a minute. I had the number of years on this slide and I thought, nah, people will tell I'm old. I ain't got to do that. But I've been in the Atlassian space for 13 years. Started out as an enterprise admin. Then I got into consulting with a platinum solution partner, got into sales with a platinum solution partner. And then for the past 6 years at Appfire, coming up on 6 years, I've been in product management. So specifically, I've been leading product analytics for Appfire for about the past 4 years. I got an opportunity, Matt Galvin, one of the co-founders of Appfire, and Andy Boyd, our chief product officer, asked me if I would build our product analytics stack, basically rebuild it from the ground up. And I remain thankful for that opportunity because I have learned so much, done so many exciting things, and I get to talk about it. And me and my team that I got to build an amazing team over the past few years to accomplish this. We get asked to talk about this a lot. What you'll see on the screen here is a few screenshots of some webinars and some podcasts and stuff that we get asked to talk about this topic quite a bit. We love to talk about it. It's in our blood. You see in the lower right, Nikki is here today. She did a podcast with Zach, who's on my team, about one of the products that one of the platforms that I'll talk to you about today, Session Replay. Okay, so maybe you've got a reason to listen to me. That'd be awesome if you do. So let's get going. Product-led growth. Here is the standard definition. The product activates, engages, and retains users, eventually funneling them through a payment flow. Typically, or most commonly, without a human touch. What does that mean? No salespeople. Now, to be clear, I'm not anti-sales. As I mentioned before, I've done a fair bit of sales. I love sales, actually. But the Atlassian marketplace primarily is a product-led growth motion. In fact, Atlassian themselves is one of the OGs, the original product-led growth companies. The incredible innovation of just being able to go up to a website, start a trial, and then if you like it, provide a credit card and pay for it. They were doing that way early before this practice was established. And so that is the primary model for the marketplace. Certainly when you get to the enterprise, there's a sales motion with solution partners. There's a sales motion, absolutely. But today, we're focusing on product-led growth. And in particular, we're focusing on activation. So engagement and retention, important topics, more advanced topics. You saw for activation you've accomplished a lot more than a lot of people do with their products. So, talking about activation, there's a thing called an activation journey. How do your trial customers get from the point of where they decide that a product might be the right thing to help them do their job better to the point where they're convinced that it does, in fact, make their work life better, and they're willing to give money to do it? In the end, we're trying to generate revenue, right? We're trying to do our paychecks here. So we'll see if this camera keeps track of me here. What you have here in this example is one of the Appfire products, Create on Transition. Marketplace listing, a screen grab from inside the product, and then payment, or closest slide I could get to the payment experience on the marketplace. It conveys the point there. So, cool. Atlassian tells us there's reports in the marketplace, there's API calls we can hit to get the data about visitors to our marketplace listing, how they got there, right? And they give us great information about what happened with the trials. Did they convert? Did they expire? What tier did they buy at? Great. Atlassian gives us great information there. But what about in the middle? What happens inside the app? How do they actually get to the decision to get to the payment page? That's the black box that we need to open. And that's what I want to show you how to do today, is open up that black box and understand not only what is happening, but how to optimize it and how to make your trial users more successful so they turn into paying customers and long-term paying customers. Okay, so that's the activation journey. The first step in understanding your activation journey is to map it, to understand the steps that your trial users are taking to get to the point where they see the value of the product and they're so convinced how valuable it is for them that they want to keep on using it every day in their work life. That's where we're headed towards here. So activation journey maps typically are broken down in 4 steps. Sign-up moment. Now, sign-up moment is the first time that the trial user decides it's worth my time to explore this app, understand how it works, and see if it'll work for me. So that's the sign-up moment. Key point, they don't get there. That means they never made it past the first page, past the marketplace page, and never made it past clicking start a trial, right? So we want them there. Then the setup moment. The setup moment is whatever they have to do to unlock the value of your app. So at Atlassian, at Appfire, some of you may have heard we have a few apps. And that was an intentional laugh line. Thank you for responding. Right now, about 60-ish of them have activation journey maps defined, and they are instrumented for us to understand that. I don't say that to brag. What I say that is to point out, if perhaps you've taken a moment and just searched and looked at the Appfire portfolio, there's a lot of different apps that do a lot of different things. For Jira, for Confluence, for Bitbucket, and then within Jira, there's workflow and automation apps. There's portfolio and project management. There's JSN, SLA, and queue management apps. There's a lot of things going on in there. I point that out because it's important to have a broad definition of the activation journey that you can then map to individual apps. Every app is different. The steps you have to take in an app to set it up, to do the thing it says it does on your marketplace listing is going to be different. So it's really helpful to have a theory, if you will, a high-level theory and framework. So the setup moment is going to be different for every app, whatever it takes to make your app work. The aha moment is when your trial user has successfully set up the app and made the app do the thing, made the app do the valuable thing that the whole reason they started the trial in the first place. So it's, aha, it actually does what it says on the tin. I get it. I get what they're talking about here. And that's the opportunity. That's the opportunity for the user to make the decision. Is this right for me? That's the first opportunity. If they do, then we go to the habit moment. The habit moment is, it is so valuable and they understand how to incorporate it into their work that they make it a habit. So let's map that to an Appfire product, Create on Transition for Jira. Pretty straightforward app. It does what it says on the tin. It automatically creates or updates issues and subtasks as part of a workflow transition. It creates issues on a transition. It's well named. Okay, so here's our activation journey map, and let's map it. So the sign up moment for Create on Transition, you may hear me call it COT, we call it internally. Typically with Create on Transition, they hit the Getting Started page inside the app. That is the first place we examine. They've gotten past the marketplace, they've started the trial, they've installed it. The first place we can actually start monitoring what a user is doing, Getting Started page. Setup moment is when they've created their first workflow transition using a Create on Transition post function. The aha moment is the first time they go into an issue with that workflow applied, trigger a workflow transition that has that post function applied, and they see an issue get created, and they see the magic happen. And then the habit moment is they have triggered that transition at least 2 times within 30 days. And that's another case where it's really useful to have a high-level theory of activation, because the number of times someone needs to do the value action for the app is going to vary by the app. The frequency is going to vary by the app. There's something called natural usage frequency. Depending upon the job that the app does, that's going to change how often a user is actually going to use it. So if they use it less frequently, I guess it must deliver a whole lot of value. Okay, so there we go. So how do we analyze the activation journey map and the success of the user getting through that activation journey? We do that with what's called an activation funnel. So an activation funnel is the user walking through the steps of the activation journey, still sign up, set up, aha, habit. And how many who started from the first step make it all the way to the habit? These dark bars are the drop-off. How many made it to one step in that journey but didn't make it to the next? Could be a number of reasons why, but that's how we analyze the success of our trial users making their way through that activation journey. All right, let's map it again to Create on Transition. We want to know how many trial users are trying, that trial licenses that are trying to evaluate Create on Transition, how many successfully get to the habit moment. So, as the small text says, app is real, journey's real, numbers are fake, but they illustrate the point. So if we start out with 100 trial users or 100 trial licenses, to be more accurate, evaluated Create on Transition, and only 57 of them go past the Getting Started page and actually go into a workflow and go into a transition and add a post function. Only 57 get there. All right, we've got 43% abandonment at that first step. We've lost 43% of our trial users at that first step. We go to the aha moment. If only 24 of that original 100 users, or those 57 users, excuse me, make it to actually trigger that workflow transition, well, now we've lost 58% on that step. So that tells us someone thought it might be valuable, understood how to make it work. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they didn't successfully get the workflow transition set up, so they never could trigger it, and they never went any further. That could be the case there. And then if only 16 out of that 100 or 16 out of the previous 24 in the aha moment actually make it a habit, actually keep on triggering that workflow transition, we have 33% abandonment, which translates into 16% activation rate. So if you take these numbers for Create a Transition, we have a 16% of the trial users successfully see the value, set up for the value, experience the value, and incorporate the value into their own workplace. We want that number higher. This is why we do that analysis. So obviously, question might come to your mind, what's a good activation rate? So I took a product management survey from Lenny Rachitsky, who's a very popular thought leader in this space. And if we classify the Elastic Marketplace as B2B enterprise SaaS, then there are some numbers for a good activation rate. You get a bunch of product managers or growth specialists, product growth specialists in a room and ask them what's a good activation rate, you'll get varying opinions. So I just went with Lenny's survey. Why not? Okay, so we understand the theory of how to activate our users. We understand how to analyze the success of that activation. We can't do the analysis without the data. So let's talk about how to get the data. Let's talk about instrumenting the activation journey map with an event tracking plan. So we've mapped out the activation journey concisely. Visited the app for the first time, created their first transition, triggered a transition for the first time, triggered that transition multiple times over a period of time. Awesome. Now we got to have an event tracking plan to actually start tracking this data. Okay. So visited the app for the first time. How do we instrument that? We can get away with one event. One message I want to make impress with you today is instrumenting doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to be dense. It just needs to be concise. Start out simple. So getting started viewed tells us for create on transition in particular, how many users, how many licenses hit the sign up moment that actually clicked the start a free trial and made it into the app. Created the first transition, we'll use let's call it workflow rule configured. Okay. Which user, which license, which transition did they create, and which kind of transition type did they create? So if you recall from the description from create a transition, it's subtasks, issues, create, update, so forth. And then triggering that transition, we would call that workflow rule executed. So did they execute the workflow rule that they created? So again, we're tracking the user, we're tracking the license, and we're tracking the transition ID because we want to correlate for the ones that were created, which were transitioned. And then the habit moment is the same event. We don't need to make a new one because we're just counting. We're counting the number of events over a period of time. Really simple. So let's talk a little bit about product instrumentation. So my mantra is keep it simple. There's lots of value to get from concise, carefully designed events. And a note here, instrumentation versus logging. They're not the same thing, okay? It's easy to think that way. But logging is how the app executes, okay? Typically back end, maybe some monitoring of front end performance as well, right? Product analytics is how the app serves your user. You're concerned with the user experience. You're concerned with the value that gets delivered. So you want to start with a question you want to answer. The question today was, how successfully does a trial user see the value of the app and get to the point where they incorporate the value of the app into their work? That was our question. We devised a test of the hypothesis, the activation journey map. Our test. We collect data to address the hypothesis. That was our event tracking plan that we put in there, right? So that's how we followed, starting with a question and then getting to the answer. You apply that continually as you instrument. Keep your audience in mind. Ideally, not just engineers, not just product managers, but also product marketing managers. If you have a sales team, your sales team, other people are looking at this data about the success of the activation of your product. So keep them in mind. There's going to be a mix of technical and non-technical users. So you want to label your events that I show you in the tracking plan and your properties consistently with your app UI. Don't use the terms you use for your variables and your methods in your code. Align it with the docs, align it with the UI itself. Real easy to consume, really easy to understand the correlation. And then plan for data governance from the start. If you were to Google me and look at the webinars and things that I've done, I pretty much talk about data governance constantly. Nikki can tell you how hardcore my team is about data governance. Keep your naming conventions. Decide on a convention, stay with them. When you have property types, decide what type should they be. Are they text? Are they Boolean? Are they an array? What's the defined set of values and so forth? Do that, and then use the tools that your analytics app gives you to monitor compliance. Data that comes in from instrumentation that does not meet your event tracking plan is a bug. It should get an issue in Jira, and it should be fixed. Okay, so let's just take a moment here and talk about leveling up your analysis. We talked about the steps for the activation journey. We talked about mapping it and understanding it. But if you want to understand, get a little more color and a little more detail about what's happening, consider using session replay. This is a screen grab and animation of someone going through a session. You can watch the events that you've instrumented happen. You can understand with more depth why they're not making it through the steps. It's not a substitute for instrumentation, but boy, sure does fill in a lot of the context for you to help you understand what's going on and why that journey isn't happening. For example, dead clicks. If you see people are not making it past the getting started page, and you look at a session replay and they're clicking where there is no link, where there is no button, they're just clicking somewhere, they're doing what's called a dead click. Well, clearly some users think that's a place to click, that it does something, but it's not, right? So fix your dead clicks. Session replay is going to tell you about that. Okay, next steps. Let's talk about picking the right tools and planning your instrumentation. A quick note about site analytics versus app analytics. Easily confused. Site analytics are clicks, views, downloads, right? Typically used for sites, not apps. For an app, they're kind of noisy because they're not focused and concise on the steps of your activation journey that you're trying to understand the success of your trial users seeing the value. Do app analytics. Define meaningful events. Takes more work, takes more code. You'll hear them, site analytics say one line of code and you completely understand what your users are doing in your site. Yes, cool, but not for product-led growth. It's noisy. Ask me how I know. B2C versus B2B tools. A lot of the analytics tools you're going to see out there are business to consumer focused. They're about the individual user. They're making their money off individual subscriptions. They're making their money off ads, right? Two of the most typical mechanisms. We sell to companies. We get teams to see the value of our product. So make sure you make the distinction between business to consumer and business to business platforms. And obviously, privacy controls. Make sure they are robust. There is really no reason to collect personal or private information in product analytics. It's not useful. Maybe that's a controversial take, but that's my take. There's no reason to collect it all. You want to know how your app is delivering value, and are your customers or potential customers getting value. You don't care what they're typing in a field. You don't. It's not useful. So ensure user input masking is supported. Ensure that you have a way to either not collect private or personal information, or a way to mask it or obfuscate it, hashing it, or whatever is the right mechanism. It'll save you a lot of headaches going on. Ask me how I know. So a few special considerations for Atlassian apps. Our apps run in an iframe. It's not an origin iframe. It's a remote iframe. You'd be amazed how many analytics apps just barf. It cannot handle that at all. So keep that in mind. Again, ask me how I know. It was quite painful finding tools that would do it right. Keep in mind, marketplace analytics are lagging indicators. They tell you someone started a trial. They'll tell you how someone finished a trial. They're very useful. But what we've been talking about today are leading indicators. Product analytics, behavioral data is a leading indicator. In the end, you should be able to see a correlation, a strong correlation between successful activation, getting to that habit moment, and successful trial conversion. And yeah, So marketing analytics are incredibly useful, but don't conflate them. They work together and they're very valuable together, but they're completely different. Okay. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to stretch this out to 30 minutes. Here, I got 5 minutes left. Okay, last slide. Further learning. All the concepts you've seen today that I have talked about come from reforge.com. If you can swing it, they are the best, in my opinion, resource to learn about product-led growth. I'll stop there. I could rant. They're awesome. Here's some thought leaders that I follow, that I enjoy. Lenny Rachitsky, he has a great podcast and a great newsletter about product management. Elena Verna focuses more on product-led growth, including enterprise product-led growth or product-led sales, which is a whole nother advanced topic that I won't talk about today, but I'm very passionate about. And Timo Dachau, he gets even deeper into product analytics. You read his stuff and he's going to constantly be ranting about you don't need that many events. I tried to convey that today by showing so few events that you needed to instrument your activation journey. Okay, obviously a question is going to come up, so I'll address it a little bit. Happy to go into more. What platforms to consider to do the instrumentation? I have to shout out Coil, which is an Atlassian Ventures platform. Now, not just because it's an Atlassian Ventures platform. I've actually got a chance to have a great talk with the founders, and they gave me an early preview before they went live with it. And it is a great business-to-business focused analytics app. Very straightforward to launch. Now, is it as sophisticated as Amplitude, the next one? No, it is not. Amplitude is the 800-pound gorilla in product analytics. It's what Appfire uses. And I could, again, talk for hours about it. LogRocket was the session replay product that I demonstrated to you today. It's my favorite. It's what we use. It's one of the few that actually plays well with non-origin iframes. Atlassian apps. If perhaps you end up talking with, well, any of those, tell them Kuhl sent you. Maybe they'll remember me. I know LogRocket and Amplitude will. I'm one of their most annoying customers. I promise my vendors that I will be their biggest public fan and their fiercest private critic. I fulfill both. Okay, that's it. If you have questions, I have answers. Again, thank you so much for such a big audience here. Please, any questions?